Hey there, welcome to the DFS Build NFL edition. I should say Thursday night edition. I'm Kevin Roberts, ready to go over the showdown slate at DraftKings for the Rams and 49ers game. This is a fun one just because it's kind of a playoff game. And I'll get into that in a second. But before I do, if you like free advice and this video ends up helping you out in any way, smash that like button. Actually, go ahead and do it right now because I'm going to go over this whole entire slate and point you to my favorite plays and also talk about ownership and projections and matchup and all that fun stuff. So smash the like button for me. If we get 30 likes on this one, I will try to do a Saturday video over the weekend for NBA DFS and maybe even a Sunday Night Football showdown slate video as well. Also, consider liking the channel so you get notified to future videos just like this. And you can, we cover NBA every single day during the regular work week, and we cover every NFL slate that we can, even showdown slates just like this. All the likes and the subscribes help us out a lot. So be sure to do both. With that said, let's get into it. The 49ers-Rams game is going to be a good one. It has a nice 49 total. The 49ers are 3-point home favorites. The 49ers need this game. The 49ers are 6-7. They did bounce back after, they've only been 2-3 in their last 5 games, so they've been struggling a little bit. They actually currently are at the bottom of the NFC West, which is probably something that surprises a lot of people. But they've had a lot of injuries. Christian McCaffrey came back for a couple weeks, and then he got hurt again, so he's done. They have lost like 3 running backs on the year. Even the guy who, came in to replace McCaffrey and was awesome last week, Isaac Guerrero, he's even nicked up and he may or may not end up playing for this game. Point being, the 49ers are mangled on offense, but they're trying. They're here. They're 6-7. And if they win this game, they would then split the season series with LA. Pretty sure LA won the first game. Yeah, they sure did back in week 3. So if they did that, they keep the playoff hopes alive. If they do not win this game, they drop to 6-8. I would imagine it is over just because the NFC North has 3 playoff teams. The NFC East has 2. You got a division winner coming out of the NFC South. Seattle's probably winning the NFC West, or at least they're in the driver's seat to do so. And then the Rams would still technically be ahead of the 49ers. So I would expect a big showing for the Niners at home with their season on the line. And I mean, the Rams have a lot to play for here too, because a win keeps them in the mix for the NFC West title. And, a loss pushes them closer to not make the playoffs. So anyways, lots to think about here. Let's get into it. The way I like to break down the showdown slates are going over the captains and looking at the ownership and projections and just kind of gauging which guys look really good, which guys could be a little bit overlooked. And then we can kind of also look in the flex and see how maybe we can get different if we do end up eating a lot of chalk. So last time we did a showdown, it was for the Monday night game between the Bengals and Cowboys. Definitely hit a lot of the plays. I told you I love Jamar Chase. I love Joe Burrow. They've smashed. I told you I love Chase Brown. I love Rico Dowdle. I didn't mind Cooper Rush. Loved CeeDee Lamb if he was going to be contrarian. He was kind of contrarian, and he smashed as well. So all those guys worked out. I had 2 misses. They were T. Higgins and Jake Ferguson. They were very low owned. Well, Jake Ferguson was very low owned. But they did not hit. So my bad on those 2 calls, but the rest of the guys did pan out. I ended up cashing myself because, of course, I had Jamar Chase in the captain a good amount. And hopefully you did too, and hopefully you did all right. And obviously the goal here is to win again on Thursday Night Football tonight. So up top is Puka Nacua. He's been amazing. Coming off, I think he has a 40-point outing in his last game. Let me double check here for you. 44 fantasy points against the Bills. And honestly, the Bills aren't even necessarily the best matchup in the world. But the matchup gets a lot tougher here. Division opponent against 49ers. He's not faced them this year due to injury, but they've been pretty stingy against wide receivers in general. On the year, they are kind of only middle of the pack. Or that's actually last 4 weeks, they're only middle of the pack. On the year, they're a lot tougher. So they've struggled a little bit lately, but all the pieces are there still for the 49ers to kind of make life a little bit difficult on the Rams passing attack. So Puka Nacua comes in with the best projection. No, that's not true. I'm sorry. Brock Purdy comes with the best projection, but he does come in with the best projection among skill players. Probably offers the highest ceiling of anybody on this slate, just based off of what we saw last year. Like nobody else except for Juwan Jennings in one random ass game earlier in the year. Nobody else has come close to that output. 44 fantasy points is obscene. I mean, I don't really think Nacua is going to do that 2 weeks in a row. But Nacua has been pretty relevant, for most of the year. I mean, he's had 17 plus fantasy points in each of his last 5 games. Earlier in the year, he was played week 1, got hurt, returned in week 8, had 21 fantasy points, and then he's been quite relevant ever since. Had 1 bad game, against the Seahawks. But I mean, he's been good all year long. So if you want to play Nakua and the captain, I don't have a problem with that. The only issue is he's going to be owned. Jamar Chase reminded us though last showdown slate that ownership doesn't mean everything. You can definitely captain Nakua and not even think twice about it, and then just try to get different, another way. I think a popular way last time was Hunter Lupke, and then it was either Tanner Hudson or the other tight Drew Sample for the Bengals. So that didn't feel comfortable doing that, but that was actually, I think that ended up being the optimal at Roto Grinders, and that was split up top with a lot of people in like major dupe cities. So that would be the rationalization for me to not captain Puka and to not captain like a chalky captain play, because a lot of people are going to do that. And then that's probably what the optimal is going to pump out too. So if a lot of people play the optimal and it does hit, okay, that's cool, but then you win like $25. So $25 is cool. Finishing first is cool, but I want to get a takedown where it's just me all by myself, or it's me and maybe 2 or 3 other squads. So that's the goal, and that's why I use my strategy and really don't go away from it that much. I certainly still had a lot of Jamar Chase on Monday night, but I had less than the field, so that's why I didn't win big or anything. So right behind Nakua is Juwan Jennings in terms of ownership. I don't know if I really agree with that, just because there's a lot of viable options on the slate. I mean, Puka Nakua getting pushed down to like 5th own on the slate, Cooper Kupp, that makes Cooper Kupp really pop to me. I mean, right now, if I'm just looking at these top options in terms of projection and role and ownership, Cooper Kupp is probably my favorite tournament option in the captain. I mean, Cooper Kupp coming in under 10% owned. He still has a massive role. Cooper Kupp has been super involved with the Rams. 8 targets last week and a touchdown, 20 fantasy points. He's had 20 plus fantasy points in 3 of his last 4 games. 4 weeks ago against the Patriots, he had 31 fantasy points. So obviously Nakua is there, and Nakua can be the top guy. I think Puka is probably safer, but I think if we're getting this ownership on Kupp is very, very appealing. So I think Kupp is my favorite tournament captain at the moment, and I love him at that ownership. And he has a solid 15-point fantasy projection. It kind of feels like a light projection. Now the Rams are not, or the 49ers are not a good matchup traditionally, but I'm willing to bet on Kupp being the better play there. He is 1.5K cheaper in the captain too, so that also plays into it. Now I don't mind Juwan Jennings. He's like significantly cheaper than Nakua in the captain at 12.9K. He does have a big role, and he's got a better matchup than Nakua and Kupp. Last week he popped off with 2 touchdowns and 28 fantasy points. He just has a much lower floor than those guys. 8 and 9 fantasy points in his previous 2 games. There is a ceiling there. I mean, 49 fantasy points back in week 3. Yeah, that was even better than what Nakua did last week. And he has had 2 other games over 25 fantasy points on the year. So Jennings does have a ceiling. Brock Purdy looked good again last week, so he bounced back a little bit. The matchup is better than what Kupp and Nakua are getting. So I do not mind captaining Jennings. The only thing is he does have a low floor. He does have other guys around him. I mean, Deebo Samuel looks kind of washed, but could be kind of like the squeaky wheel kind of thing. He kind of complained about not getting involved. He just really hasn't been very efficient. As a runner, he has not gotten it done. As a receiver, he's dropped balls, and just like him and Purdy have not been connecting. I would not be shocked if that changes this week. This is obviously a better matchup. The Rams are a better matchup through the air than the 49ers are. So Deebo as the 3rd highest owned captain, I'm probably more interested in him than Jennings. I think Jennings has probably a safer ceiling, if that makes sense. Just because Deebo's floor has been incredibly low. Just like look at what he's been doing lately. 5, 3, 6. It's disgusting stuff. He's not even super involved. He has not had more than 5 targets in any of his last 3 games. Last game he had 5 carries for 13 yards, but the previous 2 he had no carries. I do think with Isaac Guerendo being nicked up, no Christian McCaffrey and all that, I do think Deebo remaining involved as a runner is very, very likely, especially on a short week. I'll get more into that in a bit. But I just think all things considered, Deebo is an interesting play. I'm just a little bit disappointed that his ownership is actually at where it's at 11.8% right now in the captain. he does have a ceiling, but his floor is just remarkably low. So if he's going to be a chalky captain, I will get away from that. I think in a vacuum, he is an interesting play because of all the things I said. But I do think I prefer Jennings right now, even with Jennings coming in with more ownership. So Brock Purdy looks really good. Like best projection in the entire slate. He's only the fourth most owned captain. Love Brock Purdy in the captain. He's my second favorite captain play right behind Cooper Kupp, just because I think Cooper Kupp has a higher ceiling in general, even though his projection's way worse. Like I said, the Rams are the more palatable matchup through the air. So Brock Purdy should have success here. Back in week 3 against them, he had 3 touchdowns and 292 yards. That's the game Juwan Jennings popped off for 3 touchdowns, by the way. I don't really think that's going to happen again. But again, I do like Jennings in the captain because of all those reasons. But Brock is more interesting. He's going to be less owned than Jennings. He projects better than Jennings, and he smashed against the Rams last time we faced him as well. So Purdy looks great. Moving on here, George Kittle at 8.9% owned in the captain is pretty interesting. Let me check the matchup here. I think the Rams, they're like bottom 12 against tight end. So it's a fine matchup in the last 4 weeks. That really hasn't changed that much. They've gotten better against tight end lately, but I think Kittle's still viable just because, there's no McCaffrey there. So they're going to go out more in their offense and maybe take more shots down the field. Kittle has been pretty involved. He's definitely been scoring 3 touchdowns last 5 games, 6 catches for 151 yards last week. He's had 14 plus fantasy points in 4 of his last 5 games. So yeah, I mean, he had 2 games ago against the Bills, 1 catch on 2 targets. So that's the kind of floor game that Kittle does possess that can get people off of him and get you disinterested. But just because, I mean, if you play Kittle and the captain and he's just not involved and they want to run the ball a lot, then he's just going to be out there blocking. He's going to be a decoy, and then you really need him to score a touchdown or he's going to bust. But he's been really involved overall, and the matchup isn't super scary. So at his ownership, I do have interest in Kittle in the captain. He's less expensive than Juwan Jennings, not that much more expensive than Debo, and less expensive than all the other guys that I like in the captain. So he is definitely in play. I would probably rank him 3rd. I'm going Kupp, Purdy, and Kittle in terms of the guys I want to be overexposed to in the captain. Once again, not saying I don't want to play Puka and Jennings in the captain. They both look really, really good, but they're also the 2 highest owned captains on the slate. So I do want to get away from them a little bit and get exposure to these other guys as well. So Stafford looks fine as a captain too. Stafford just traditionally does not have like a massive ceiling. Last week, he did have 23 fantasy points, but that's the crazy thing. Puka had 44 fantasy points last week, and Stafford only had 23. So unless he's throwing touchdowns, he's not really going to get there. He offers nothing as a runner. He's not going to score on the ground. Watch him score on the ground now that I said that, right? But even when he's putting up touchdowns, like in his 2 previous games, he did not top 20 fantasy points. He has a lot of games below 20 fantasy points on the year. Last time he faced the 49ers, it was more like they did the damage on the ground. He only had 12 fantasy points. And again, the Rams do not have the better matchup on paper through the air. So I would not be shocked if he is a disappointing captain at all. I think he's okay in the flex because I do like to play quarterbacks together, especially in games that have shootout potential like this. 49 total definitely suggests that's possible. I just don't think he is going to give you the upside you want in the captain, especially when you have comparable plays. Cooper Kupp's only 1.5K more expensive. Brock Purdy's a way better captain on this slate, and he's only $600 more. I just think across the board, Stafford for me doesn't make a lot of sense as the captain. I like that he's not going to be owned. I think that makes him an interesting tourney play, but just not really something I'm going to gravitate towards. I will say that this ownership, it's early on Thursday. It's only 8:28 Central, so I will definitely refresh your ownership and make sure we have a better feel of where we're going to be at. Just because the 49ers fullback is then coming in right after Stafford, so I don't think the ownership is quite accurate, especially with Isaac Guerrero. Is he even on here? No, he's not even in here right now. Well, he is questionable to play. I don't think there's been any update on that. Let me check. He's listed as questionable. He exited last week's game. So I'll talk about him real quick, just because he's not even listed in the Road Grinders, projections lobby at the moment. If he plays I am a little bit worried about them, having him kind of limited just because they've done this before. A lot of teams do this on a short week. Even their like key feature back, they will, if they had a huge workload the previous week, they'll kind of, keep that workload contained to protect them. I would certainly be worried about that with Kyren Williams. 29 carries, 31 total touches last week. He crushed with 23 fantasy points, and he's obviously got massive upside. Had a good game against the Niners earlier this year, and it is a solid matchup for them, certainly more so than it is through the air. But I'd be a little bit worried about Kyren not having like a massive role on a short week. Maybe we could consider Blake Corum a little bit. Sorry if I'm sounding stuffy. I'm working through a new cold. Always fun. But yeah, Corbin he's had 8 carries in each of his last 2 games, so he's getting a little bit more involved. I just would not be shocked at all if that ended up being the case, where at least he stayed steady with 8 to 10 touches, or maybe even got a little bit more work on the short week. But it is such a big game, so maybe it just kind of cancels it out, and Kyren just remains really, really involved because the Rams do not want to lose this game. Let's look at other plays. I think that's kind of it for the captain. I'll say Guerrero is viable in the captain if he's active. I'm just a little bit worried that he would end up possibly being overowned because he's not 100% healthy. Leaving the last game nicked up is not good, and then it being a short week. So we could definitely look to Patrick Taylor, 11.1K if Guerrero is out. I think Patrick Taylor is still in play if Guerrero is in, just because of what I said. I don't know if we could fully trust Guerrero's status. But obviously Patrick Taylor looks like a smash at that price if Guerrero's out. We could also look to Keyshawn Vaughn or Israel Abanikanda if those guys are active and Guerrero is out. Do I feel really good about either of them? No, because the 49ers tend to give one guy the rock, and that's it. But the 49ers running backs also are dropping like flies. So maybe we can just bank on, Taylor also getting hurt and then play one of those guys. But I think those guys are not really captain plays. They're just interesting flex plays if we want to get a little bit different and maybe kind of leverage potential Guerrero or Taylor ownership. Other guys. Oh yeah, and then Kyren Williams. I don't want to forget about Kyren Williams. I think the matchup is solid. I'd be a little bit concerned about the short week after 31 touches, but he looks great. I have no problem with Kyren Williams, and he's not even going to be very owned. So I'm definitely looking to take advantage of that. If he's going to be under 10% owned in the captain, I definitely want some Kyren Williams. Just kind of playing him. Not super aggressively playing him, but I still would want to be over the field for sure, because that's kind of crazy to me. I would imagine the short week could end up playing into that a little bit. Other options here. The kickers are in play. The kickers always wreck on Thursday Night Football, so Jake Moody and Joshua Carty both look viable. Carty has not been great. The Rams do not kick a lot of field goals. He's literally attempted 3 field goals in the last 4 games. Their offense has been pretty good, so he's going to get some scoring opportunities after touchdowns. But I don't know. I don't know if I like him as much as Moody here. I think I would definitely prefer Moody. But neither kicker has been really, really good. I will say that. On the year, Moody averages more fantasy points per game. But lately, neither of them have topped even 8 fantasy points with any consistency. So I would not like them as much as I'd like kickers normally, but it is a short week. So offenses can, struggle a little bit to punch it in a little bit more than they normally do. So definitely kickers are in play because they seem to always wreck. I think keep an eye on Demarcus Robinson's status. He is questionable to play. He's always a threat to score a touchdown. He has 2 touchdowns in his last 3 games, 7 on the year. Not really a high volume guy. He is an interesting captain, though, just because he's kind of cheap and only 6.6K. If he's in, I don't mind a dash of him in the captain, and he looks like a really good flex play at 4.4K. If you get to him, nothing wrong with that. If he is out, we can look to Tutu Atwell, who had 3 catches for 45 yards last week. He's been pretty involved no matter what. He's had at least 2 catches in each of his last 3 games. Not a very high ceiling either. Not the best captain in the world, but if Robinson is out, Atwell naturally would play a little bit more. So I don't hate him as like a small sprinkling captain. And then also keep an eye on the status of Jordan Whittington. He is also questionable. If he is in and Robinson is out, I do not mind him at all as a 1.2 captain dive, but I would mostly just want to slide him into the flex. I think that kind of does it for the Rams receivers there. Tyler Johnson also, I don't want to forget him. He's not been involved at all lately, but if Whittington and or Robinson end up missing, he also would be getting more work. So I would not completely rule him out either. Mostly all these guys I'm saying, all of them, even DeMarcus Robinson, they all profile best as flex plays. But I think Robinson is the most compelling one to play in the captain because he's still pretty cheap. He's the third guy for the Rams when he's healthy, and he's, he scores a lot of touchdowns. Like he does have a role there. So I can see him popping off a little bit. Pretty sure he did well against them earlier in the year too. Oh no, he didn't. Well, only one catch for 32 yards. Tutu Atwell had 4 catches for 93 yards. But again, the 49ers are not a very friendly matchup for wide receivers, so that's not that surprising. That said, Robinson is always live to break a slate with a touchdown or even 2. So if he's in play, and the other guys are mostly going to be flex plays if he's out. Ricky Pearsall, I'll just mention him just because I think he's an okay flex play. He's not doing anything lately. But with Debo struggling and everything, and the Rams being a decent matchup through the air, I don't think he's the worst punt in the flex. 4.8K price means nobody's going to be on him. So I think that is probably one play that interests me as far as like if I'm going to eat chalk in the captain. If you're just going to go play Puka Nacua and then maybe run it back with like, Stafford and Brock or something, you're going to need to save some money, and you're also going to need to get different. So I do think Pearsall could be an interesting way to get different because nobody's going to play him, and he is still cheap enough that we can go do that. As far as the tight ends go, obviously Kittle is the guy for the 49ers. Don't really want to play with 49ers tight ends. I guess Eric Saubert, he caught a pass last week. 1 catch for 4 yards. That's about what you're looking at. I mean, as far as flex goes, he's fine. He's a fine punt. You can do that because he's there. But I don't feel good about it. He's just no ceiling to speak of whatsoever. Jacob Cohen, if he is active, I guess he's an okay punt, but I don't feel great about it. Rams tight ends, Davis Allen is questionable. Tyler Higbee remains out. So we're really just looking at Coley Parkinson at 2.4K, or who's the other guy? Hunter Long. He played a little bit last couple weeks, but no, I think we're just looking at Colby Parkinson here, and that's a nice price for him. 2.4K as a cheap captain play. Really tiny sprinkling of him and the captain. I wouldn't really go crazy there. He's not going to have high volume here, but he looks like a great flex dive for sure. All right, so that does it for breaking down all the main players. Let me just double check there. I mean, like you can always play anybody on Showdown. Chris Conley, I mentioned Hunter Long, Eric Sauber. I mean, I don't want to play these guys, but you can. It's a Showdown, so you can play whoever you want. My strategy, though, is to get different than the captain. And I don't mind playing Puka Nacua or Juwan Jennings if they're going to be chalky. That's okay. But if I'm going to eat chalk, it's going to be Brock Purdy. I love that he's the 4th most owned player despite having the best projection on the slate and also having the best matchup as far as the passing attacks go. Brock Purdy is he's my second favorite captain, but he's my favorite chalky captain. My favorite captain is going to be Cooper Kupp. We know Cooper Kupp has massive upside. We know he has a big role, and it's fairly likely the Rams will be trailing on the road in this game. So while the matchup is not amazing, I do think that it could favor Kupp kind of in the mid-range instead of the deep shots Puka Nacua takes and all the yards after catch he gets. I don't know if that's really going to be there as consistently as people are going to expect it or hope it to be. So that's probably where I'm at there. Cooper Kupp is probably my favorite one right now, then Purdy, and they also really like under-owned Kittle and Kyren Williams. Those are the 4 guys I'm targeting the most. I think I'll slide Kittle under Williams. I'm really targeting I like the Kupp and Kyren ownership right now, and hopefully that ends up sticking where it's at. All right, that is going to do it for me. Hopefully this helps you out a little bit. Maybe you weren't on Kupp and Kittle and Kyren and or Purdy as much or at all, and I can nudge you that way, and hopefully that works out. Or maybe something else was touched on here that you weren't quite thinking about, and hopefully it helps you cash or win big tonight. If it does, drop a comment, let us know how you did, or if you have any questions, also drop a comment, let us know about anything that you need an answer for going into Thursday Night Football. Smash that like button and also consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching and good luck.